If you're watching this, you may have heard that Apple just announced iOS 14 a few days ago at WWDC. It's an extremely huge update, even better than what Google is doing with Android 11. And in my opinion, I couldn't help but notice that most of the features announced were very similar to that of the Android platform. It's not a bad thing. I'm not trying to bash Apple here for doing this. Matter of fact, I actually think it's a good thing. When I switched to the iPhone a few months back, I said to myself several times, why doesn't Android have this feature? And then I also said to myself several times, why doesn't iOS have this feature? It's a back and forth game. So I installed iOS Beta 14 on my iPhone 11 Pro, and I'm going to show you most of the new iOS features that Android already has. Let's start with the most obvious, home screen changes. Widgets can now be placed on the home screen amidst all your other apps, and there is also an app drawer if you scroll all the way to the right, which Apple is calling App Library. As of now, the only widgets that you can place are Apple's own apps, but third-party developers will be able to make their own in the future, which is pretty cool. As for the existing widgets, I honestly think they look clean and fit the overall theme well. However, you can't really resize them like how you can on Android. Instead, when you place one down, Apple provides you with various preset sizes to choose from, and you also can't put the widgets in the middle of the screen, which is odd. However, I do enjoy how you can stack widgets on top of each other to swipe between them. It's a very satisfying motion. And there's also a Smart Stack widget which does the same thing, but it tries to show you widgets that you may need at the moment based on your routines. So Android did have it first, but I love how Apple included their own perks. It reminds me of how OnePlus or Samsung has taken something basic from native Android and made it better. For example, on stock Android, you can take screenshots, but OnePlus and Samsung made it even better by supporting expandable screenshots. As for the app library, it's pretty confusing and not very straightforward when compared to an alphabetical app drawer. It's definitely going to take some time to get used to since most of the apps are hidden within a category and you'll have to make an educated guess as to where one of your apps could be placed. Of course, you could just use the search feature, but then that begs the question, what's the use of this page? I do get that some people will still love to use it, especially since the library still provides suggested apps, but I do believe Apple could have made it a bit easier to use. After all, that's what iOS is based around, just being simple and straightforward. The next new feature that Android has had for a while, and it still boggles my mind as to why Apple took so long to include, is default apps. You will be able to replace the email and browser apps with your own third-party ones. For example, when I tap on a link, instead of having it open in Safari, I can have it automatically open in Google Chrome, or when I tap on an email address, it will automatically open up in Gmail instead of the iPhone Mail app. It's a great start. Hopefully they can also throw in a few more default apps in the future like Maps, Music, Camera, the phone, SMS, etc. Picture-in-picture mode is yet another feature that I wish iOS had for the longest, and now it's finally arrived. When you're watching a video and you support an app like Safari or you're FaceTiming, you can now swipe up to go home or switch to another app and the video will still be on the screen playing as a floating window. I know, it's amazing. Apple even implemented it a bit better than Android since the resizing of the video and hiding looks a lot smoother and is a lot more mesmerizing. Google is still trying to figure it out and perfect it, so props to Apple for getting it polished up first. However, what used to not be mesmerizing within iOS was receiving phone calls. It was so annoying. First off, any incoming phone call or FaceTime call could easily interrupt whatever you were doing. Plus, if you didn't want to talk to a person, but you also didn't want to seem rude by declining their call immediately, you had to wait on that same screen till it timed out since you couldn't swipe away from it. Now, just like Android, iOS 14 solved this by using banner notifications for incoming calls or FaceTime calls. Plus, you can swipe it away and finish what you're doing. The ringing will continue in the background and it won't interrupt you. Another borrowed feature in iOS 14 is wind down mode. Google introduced this feature with the exact same name around 2 years ago in Android 9 Pie. It's found within the Digital Wellbeing app and they recently renamed it to bedtime mode. So wind down mode in iOS has the same concept, but it's a bit more powerful. It will basically encourage you to go to sleep by asking you to play some bedtime music, offering to read you a story, change the scene in your room, etc. However, I don't believe it will include a grayscale mode like how Android does. Moving on, App Clips is very similar to that of Android's 4-year-old Instant Apps feature. Essentially, you can try out a few apps without fully installing them. It's great for when you want to try out a large file-sized game, but don't want to wait a long time for it to download. Or for when you need to use an app just like a parking meter app or a scooter app. Apple did take it a step further by supporting QR codes and NFC and also integrating the feature within some of its apps like Maps or Messages. Lastly, Apple updated a ton of its apps with very similar features to those found within some of Google's stock apps. For example, Apple Maps now supports biking mode, and it will also alert you if there is a speed camera nearby, something that Google has had for a while. The iOS stock keyboards now finally support voice recognition. It doesn't work as well as Gboard, but since it's in its early stages, I'm sure it'll improve over time. And the keyboard also supports a search interface for emojis, just like Gboard does. Finally, the Safari browser is going to let you translate any web page, just like Google Chrome. Anyways, those are the features that iOS 14 seemed to borrow from Android. Again, I'm not trying to bash Apple here for it seeming like they got some of their ideas from an outside source. I personally think that it's great that these features are now on iOS, especially since I know Google is also not innocent. They pretty much copied iOS's gesture navigation, and within Android 11, they may also be planning a similar feature to AirDrop called Nearby Sharing. Either way, that's it for this video. If you're new to the channel and you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a huge thumbs up and get subscribed with the notification bell turned on for more future videos just like this one. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Kapow!